Hello to all. Here today with the Tier 10 Premium Pan-European Destroyer, the Smaland. We are on patch 0.9.2. Today is day 1 and day 1 of the Smaland's release. For the low price of 2 million free experience, you can acquire Smaland into your port. Just got her just now. So let's take her for a quick spin. But first off, Pan-European Destroyer, statistically speaking, we're looking at, well, nothing special in terms of armor. Pretty normal 19mm extremities and 13mm superstructure. However, in terms of actual durability, she sits at a healthy 19,200 before Captain. And if I just pull off my Friesland Captain, who we will be borrowing for this commentary, he will jump up to 22,700, so not the lowest HP, but not the highest either, so pretty sitting above the Shimakaze by a little bit, but overall a relatively squishy destroyer, nothing like the Thunder Chunkers of the Harugumo, which can get up to 29,000, or the Kleber, which is a far healthier boat and has the advantage of that unique HE saturation. Artillery-wise, just like the Friesland that comes before her, she has two twin 120mm turrets, one forward and one aft. You'll see here they have a reload time of just 1.5 seconds right now with this build. I haven't put on my modules yet, so you can get it to about 1.3. Main battery firing range of 11.4 is short, but workable. So module-wise, just gonna hook her up now. Only two turrets, so to protect my torpedo tubes and my guns. Main armaments in slot 1, slot 2 is a no-brainer. Should be engine room protection. Now if you have access to a radar special module, it's probably worth taking it because the Smalland does indeed have radar. So if I skip back here to the consumables just for a quick second, she has a repair party. So she has a heal. There's a standard heal, so a 10% per second for 14 seconds, so a 14% heal. Or sorry, 1% per second. And then a regular damage control, and then a speed boost. Now this is not a normal speed boost either. This is her unique speed boost. You can see here it gives a whopping plus 30% speed for 60 seconds only, with a 100-second reload time with 4 charges, so it's a bit like a rocket booster. She has a stock speed of 35 knots, but can temporarily pump that up by, what's 3.5 by 3? So she can pump herself up to 45.5 knots while the speed boost is running, so obviously this will enhance your maneuverability while it's active. Note here that this is a secondary turret. She does in fact only have 2 primaries, and quite a modern set of armaments, as you can see by some of the anti-ship missiles mounted on her side. She does only have 2 torpedo tubes. They are 2 asymmetrical tubes. While we're here, there's a triple tube in the rear and a quint tube in the front. These are the new Pan-European torpedoes, of course. So they hit for only 10,000 damage, but in exchange they have a nice range of 12 kilometers. And more importantly, they have a speed of, I believe it's something like 70 knots? Oh, 76 knots. So these are comparable to the ones found on the Tech Tree T10, which is yet to be released, the Halland. So these are low damage but high speed torpedoes which are relatively stealthy. They are a supplementary weapon to your guns, and something to do when you're not trying to shoot up destroyers with your radar. Now the radar, now that we've gotten to it, is a pretty standard destroyer radar, 7.5 kilometer action radius, same as the Black, and 20 seconds stock time for action. So if you add a radar module, I believe you can get this up to about 28-ish seconds. Anyhow, with that said, I don't have a spare radar module right now, so I'm going to take engine room protection in slot 2. Slot 3... The AA is actually pretty good, but torpedo tubes might be better. Now the stock AA is pretty good. These Pan-European destroyers do have quite a bit of AA, as you can see, 413 continuous. But I kind of find that module for AA to be pretty mediocre, and since I do have torpedo tubes, might as well get them a little faster. 5% of 76 is going to be about 3 knots, so it's not insubstantial thanks to the high base speed. So I'm going to go with torpedo speed for now. And then here, propulsion module is pretty standard for destroyers in slot 4. Concealment's a no-brainer. Concealment for the Pan-European destroyers, just like the Friesland that has come before them, is not particularly fantastic, so with Concealment Module and Concealment Expert, we could drop down to 6.1, which gives us a 1.4 kilometer stealth bubble. And last but not least, let's see, so I could drop main battery or I could drop torpedo tubes. Now we don't have a smoke unlike the Friesland, but I think I'm going to go for guns because I think guns are going to be better. Now flag-wise, okay, I wanted exterior, not Tech Tree, but there is that Halland I mentioned. Flag-wise, so this is our chroma camo, by the way. I only have one scheme right now. This is green and yellow pattern. Has the standard bonuses of plus 100% and minus 50. Signal-wise, since we're doing a commentary, let's just hook her up with some combat signals. No detonations. Get a little bit of extra speed. Consumable time. AA time, and we're good to go. And last but not least, hook her up with a flag of the First League, and let's see what we can do with this Day 1 Smalland. Hopefully we can get a decent commentary, because otherwise I'm going to be a bit sad. Anyhow, she's suited up in the way I would like to suit her. Now, the Pan-European destroyers in terms of the game as a whole, the Smalland in particular operates as a kind of scout boat and cap contester. She does have access to that radar, of course, and that excellent fire speed. She had 1.5 second stock reload time after I put on a captain, and with that module, that takes it further 1.3 or 13% off. It should be at about 1.3 seconds. Surprisingly, I'm the only Smalland in this match, so we'll see how this goes. Pure tier 10 matchmaking on Tears of the Desert is domination, however. Enemy has a Harugmo at 6.2, so I outspotted about 1 kilometers. And a Z52 who matches my concealment. Daring that beats me by 100 meters at 6.0, and a gearing that's either 5.9 or 5.6, depending on if he's mounting a legendary module. Radar-wise, 1 radar, 1 other super cruiser, no, 2 radars actually, both on super cruisers. Turn my AA off. Turn my radar bubble on. Turn my AA bubble on because I like that too. And we'll see what kind of trouble we can get ourselves into. Gonna head up towards sea since I'm spawning there. I'm already RPF'd, so there's another RPF destroyer here. Now remember, I don't have a smoke screen, unlike the Friesland that comes before me. In exchange, I have that kind of disengage, engage speed boost. Gun angles are not the best. You have to get quite a bit of broadside, as you can see, just like with the Friesland, but the turret traverse is fairly respectable. Do I have... Alright, so I don't have the 360-degree turrets that the Friesland has access to, which is a bit sad, but we'll make do. You can see my torpedo tubes loading. I'm actually not sure how the staggered tubes work. So it looks like I have a narrow spread and a slightly wider spread, which is interesting. So you can get some pretty accurate spreads, but this will result with small gaps in between torpedoes. It's going to be an interesting experience. Oh, Interestingly, the radar is actually modeled, so it actually spins, even in game. Oh, I probably should have switched this over to a Swedish flag, but no matter. We'll fix that afterward. You can see that sloped deck on the rear, probably in the past meant for pushing off objects, or loading objects onto the boat. So there's someone in front of me, for sure. I'm gonna try and extend my radar in. I do want to disengage in the direction of my allies, but I want to avoid incoming fire, so I think I am going to lean toward disengaging to the right if necessary. Now our torpedo tubes are now loaded. Remember, I have those 12 km fast torpedoes. I'm going to aim with RPF and to intercept the Yoshino, I guess. That's the quint, and that's the triple. My radar covers most of the cap now. can see here, I'm a fairly sizable destroyer, almost sliding out of the cap at this point. Gonna ready myself to disengage. You can see my torpedoes speeding toward, and something touches the cap. I'll wait to see if my torpedoes connect. Looks like they're a bit too far forward for the Yoshino, unfortunately. He did slow down and turn. No, wait. Nope, I did actually catch the Yoshino with torpedo. I'm spotted now, which means something's definitely inside my gun range. It's a daring. I'm gonna pop my speed boost. And probably a heal at this point. Harugumo's here as well. You can see here I got double fired. I'm hidden by that smoke. Yoshino's on fire. I got relit by the daring, unfortunately. There's a Harugumo and a Smalland, and a daring here. So that's two gunboats that are actually fairly potent. My heal took me back up after the fire, but thanks to the fire that's on me, I am quite detectable. The radar charge, however, did force the daring from his short duration smoke. Harugumo behind me. Now I do have backup, but I'm gonna prefer to try and lead the Harugumo, or the daring rather. I was briefly on fire. There are allied torpedoes somewhere behind me, and there's a daring inside the cap, but thanks to my heal, I was able to bring myself back up. In terms of health, I'm sailing away from the Harugumo. I'm gonna re-enter the cap. The Harugumo's entering. There's, however, a Thunderer in distance at 12 km, which is not something I want to tango with. Looks like daring's sailing up towards the north side of the cap. Foolishly, the Harugumo does manage to get himself hard spotted for some reason. You can see there my short duration speed boost is already over. There's the daring on the edge of my detection. As their attention is split, I'm gonna go for the daring first, because he's slightly more threatening, because he does actually manage to outspot me. If I zoom out a little, you can see my shells are starting to find their mark. That insane reload is going to make short work of him. He is trying to smoke up, but I have a radar to keep him lit in 5 seconds. Might not need it. Alright, I should probably bop it instead of clowning around, even though he's low HP. He perhaps is forgetting that I have access to a radar. Now he does have his own torpedoes, remember, so... Time to disengage. Looks like the Harugumo on the other side got engaged upon. Thunder is liable to fire upon me. And with the HE coming my way, I'm not really intending on taking that, so I'm going to disengage from the cap. Having dispatched some destroyers with my radar, or a destroyer I suppose. Now he's still inside my torpedo range, he's trying to disengage. So this is the widespread. I think I'm going to use a widespread quint, but oh, that's the widespread triple. I'm going to hold on to my quint tube. I guess it fires the triple first all the time. That's a good piece of information to know. He's going to run away. So I'm going to get a bit closer to him first. There's Hindenburg on my other side, do note. Now these torpedoes don't hit very hard. Remember that first torpedo hit on the Yoshino, for example, which has fairly minimal torpedo protection, only hit for 9,000. But I'm going to claim this cap. Yes, stay away from the Hindenburg, it's 6 km hydro. Holding onto my last two because the Thunder is angled out and away. Kind of waiting for him to reach an angle where he wants to re-engage. The short cooldown of these, relatively short cooldown of these 100-second cooldown torpedoes does allow me to keep using them at a fairly consistent clip. This time using a narrow spread for the quint. Right, someone got hit. I'm within 5 km of the Hindenburg, do note, or within 6 km I guess. So I'm well within spotting range.
Set a smoke screen.
Set a smoke screen roll. I would if I could, but I can't. Alright, got the cap. There's the Thunder. Just gonna let them engage the Hindenburg and kill him off, and then I'm gonna move on to back to B cap.
Thank you.
See how our torpedoes are doing. So triple tube missed at this point. Gonna contest B from the northern side. And continue to harass off this Thunderer. He's fairly low and looks like he's going to be taking 2 of my high-speed torpedoes to the bow. So, with that said, it looks like it's just enough to finish him off. I didn't get to comment on how fast I went during the speed boost, but it should have been about 45 knots. Haven't had to use it since. In this case now we're just repositioning with our swift little destroyer. Not the best of destroyer players, but as you can see, the combination of these 1.3 second reload guns, same as those found on the Friesland, as well as high speed and radar of 7.5 kilometer range, allows you to do some quite proficient chasing and killing, especially against people who might not be aware yet that the Smalland has access to a radar. Montana approaching up in toward my range.
Good game, everyone.
I assume he's going to come in toward the cap. And this time it fired the quint tube first and then the triple, so maybe it depends on which side. As in, if you're shooting rearward, it probably fires the triple first, and then if you're shooting forward, it probably fires the quint first. So he is, in fact, turning in, as I predicted. We are going to take the cap first, I think. But thanks to the circumstances, I can see most of the enemy ships. If this Montana chooses to fire, I probably will open up and try and get a fire with my 1.5 or 1.3 second reload guns. They have a pretty respectable 9% fire chance, so... Oh, he opened up. Now there is a Stalingrad in the distance, but no matter. It's more important to get a fire here. I'm gonna fire for one more reload cycle because I'm gonna be spotted when he fires anyway, and he's damage controlling now. See if we can throw off his aim with a speed boost. Meant to speed boost and instead I healed, but whatever, we have more charges. There's a return fire. Now we'll cease fire. Have the permafire I wanted. Still blocking the cap temporarily. My shells are still landing, you can see at ranges. The arcs do get kind of poor. So there's a gearing and a Z on that corner, but he has a lot of support, so can't do much about that. Looks like the Montana's running Legendary module based on how short duration those fires are. There's something right here on this vector based on RPF, so that could well be the gearing. So I'm actually going to shoot torpedoes into this gap when I cross over next time. 2 radar supercruisers still back there. And there's something here. Oh, okay, I accidentally fired a tube in that direction, which is very bad. Because I'm not going to have it anymore. I was trying to ping the minimap for my allies. But I'm just going to approach that direction and stop the potential cap contest. If anyone wants to reverse in from there, I guess I'll give them the triple tube. RPF signals mixed in with the Montana now. Someone popped a radar. Okay, low HP Z wants to fight me. It's popping radar for some reason. I'll pop mine.
The ship is on fire.
In exchange, as he tries to smoke in.
Problem solved, sir.
I have a Minotaur assisting me. So with a few more shells, we should be able to disengage quite safely. That leaves a gearing, a Stalingrad, and this Montana, but we have cap control now. Hopefully we can secure the cap.
Astern.
That's That's my last radar charge. And there's a full HP gearing. I think at this point I'm actually going to gun for that last cap. Try and stop him that way. You can see the Stalingrad over there with his butt sticking out. And stop him from reversing out potentially. Very narrow spread here, as you can see. My Minotaur and I are now going to shell him. I'm in full view. I'm going to pop my speed boost just to cross this gap as quickly as possible. You can see here the AP is actually quite respectable. Of course, it's mostly the Minotaur's AP dealing that damage, but I have no complaints. With 1.3 second reload, even my tiny little pea shooter AP shells can be quite potent. And looking at my high-speed torpedoes, if the Montana turns in and goes straight, I can catch him with my remaining triple tube. It's not going to deal that much damage, but we're just here to look for a flood. If we get a flood, we can try and set a fire, potentially. Now the gearing is still full health. Switch back to high explosive because that's the next person I expect to engage. I'm gonna try and head back to my repub and escort him.
Engine boost deactivated.
There's that Montana. Looks like my high-speed torps might just catch him. You can see that 76 knot speed is pretty insane. Just overled by a little bit, looks like. He did slow down in order to fire some shots, so it does happen. Oh, I'm spotted. Now I'm out of heal charges. Broken tube permanently. Just gonna disengage myself, hide away. I have a rear gun, and more importantly, I have an allied Minotaur. Fire the quint tube into that space. Try and arc some shells over, in case the Minotaur doesn't manage to finish him, but my Minotaur ally does, in fact, finish him off, and at this point, it should be very simple to harass the Montana. Very easily able to kite away, thanks in part to the gearing's poor arcs. At this point I can pop the rocket booster.
Engine boost
You
activated.
can see the speed quickly climbing on the edge. I still have my triple tube, I did fire the quint. Looks like he's moving fairly slowly. He might accelerate a little bit, but at this point I just want to catch him with a flood, so I'm gonna use a widespread triple tube. And he should know he's under fire, so might as well just go for some damage. Since he's pretty broadside, gonna try for the AP. You can see the AP does take some nice bites out of superstructure. He's firing AP. You can see I don't take full AP pens, but because of the large size of my ship, I do take quite a bit of damage. Looks like I'm gonna catch him with some of these torpedoes. One torpedo for a small amount of damage. He is flooding, however. And looks like it might be mine. Nope, not quite. Repub secondaries will finish him off as he's flooding. And there you have it. A quick first game. Where we even managed to survive in spite of my tendencies to sometimes kill myself. So we got a Dreadnought, funnily enough. 90,000 damage, pretty good first game. 210 target hits, We used a mix of HE and AP, as you can see from the ricochets and non-pens, 4 torpedo hits, 3 in caps, 2 kills, 2 fires, 2 floods, 2 solo captures, and 6 spotting ribbons. Team score wise, pretty nice game, 1900. Close to the top, but not quite. I guess the other destroyer did put in some work. Didn't really see him around too much, but he must have done some work in the northern side while we were working down in the south. And if we go to the detailed report, we can see nice mix of AP and HE, but mostly gun damage, just about half of it. And then torpedoes contributing some nice supplemental damage, and then some dot damage as well. As you can see here, nice even mix of damage, but if we go to something like a battleship, shell and dot damage, daring's going to be mostly shell damage. Shell damage here, so as you can see, a nice mixed armament loadout, and even without premium time would have made me some decent amount of credits. So that was our first game in the Smalland, my first game in the Smalland too, before I had 0 experience, you know. And yeah, she seems to be a fairly solid destroyer. The gimmick of radar plus Friesland's guns seems to be quite a bit stronger than Friesland's own hydro, just because of the extended range, which allows you to kind of reach beyond that 6.1 kilometer detection. And having access to that supplementary weapon of torpedoes does mean that when you have downtime, you aren't as afraid to go out and actively move around, because you're able to reach out and strike opponents that would otherwise be outside of your influence range with the torpedoes, even from stealth. Anyhow, that was my first game in the Friesland. The flags seem to have all unequipped themselves, so I guess I may have forgot to auto remount them. But generally speaking, that was your pretty generic Friesland or Smalland gameplay. She plays much like a oversized Friesland, but the difference between having a radar instead of hydro and then that speed boost instead of a smoke does amount to a fairly substantial difference in gameplay, especially when you combine that with the presence of the torpedoes, which allow you to supplement your extremely powerful gun damage with a torpedo threat, which, while being insubstantial in terms of raw alpha, does actually pack quite a punch, especially with the 80 knots with the torpedo module. So that'll be all for now. That was my first impressions of the Smalland. A fairly solid boat. Is she worth 2 million free experience? Well, probably not. The Friesland's probably still a better investment if you want a pan-European destroyer for free experience at 1 million. She's pretty much just as strong in her own niche. Her AA is even more fearsome, the Friesland that is. The Friesland does have much more of a niche as a AA boat. If we go to the anti-aircraft artillery, for example, she has 313, but she does, in terms of continuous damage, but she does have access to a defensive fire. Whereas the Smalland has unsectored 434, but doesn't have access to that 50% bonus to pump it up. Just as an aside, with that AA note in mind, if you want a more AA focused tier 10, I believe the Halland, the Tech Tree version of the Smalland, you'll see, they look pretty identical. So the Tech Tree version does have 2 full quints instead of the quint and the triple. No missile launcher for her, however. But if you go to her AA, if you were to go to her AA stat, I believe it would be similar to the Smalland's 434, but she has access to a defensive fire instead of a radar. So, you want AA, just play the Tech Tree ship. The Smalland is more dedicated for hunting destroyers, and this is a role which she does quite well in. As you can see, basically whenever you get spotted, you just pop the radar, and with that overwhelming firepower plus your heal, plus your speed boost, which can allow you to disengage if the engagement happens to become unfavorable, you can easily get out of the way. And thanks to that withering 1.3 second reload and the 9% fire chance per shell, you can output a buttload of damage. I'll wrap this up here, and I'll catch you all later. Hope you all enjoyed. Cheers!